Thank you for joining me today. We started from last week talking about price, your estimate. And one of these items or activities is excavation and fill. So keep in your mind, um, we have different types and methods to do your excavation. So let's start with excavation equipment and methods. The more common types of excavation and the backfill activities associated with them are we have different methods or different equipment can be used in this activity. We have a method called the site cut and fill. We have a method for basement type excavation, trench excavation, bit and sump excavation, and hand excavation. You should be aware of these different methods or different activities from building construction course. Let me go through them quickly. The site cut and fill operation, the idea is, just a moment. The idea is your site or the ground surface of the site is almost to be horizontal, but we need to make it more straight like this. So sometimes we need to do cut and sometimes we need to do fill. We need only grader. This grader just to level your ground surface. So the grader will do cut, will move the soil in this area and fill this area with the soil coming from this side. That makes sense? This is the meaning of site cut and fill operation. The equipment used in cut and fill operation depends mostly on the scale of the project. So if you are working only for your house, it's only maybe not 1 acre, less than acre. That means the size of the equipment will be very small. But if you are talking about project to build a university or to build a very big complex or to build a highway, the size of the equipment will be different. So sorry, extensive operations call for large size earth moving scrapers and bulldozers, often working in teams, excavating and depositing large quantities of material. Because your project is very large, you need to do extensive work, which is then leveled and compacted by a second team of rollers, water trucks, and graders. But sometimes we have a small project. So the small cut and fill operations can be undertaken with no more than a small dozer and grader, or even with a bobcat and a walk behind roller. So based on the size of your project, we need, and the activity is just cut and fill, we need to determine what is the correct, what is the more appropriate size of your equipment. Doesn't it make sense? You have a very small project and you rent a very big equipment. The second one, if you have a basement, this one is basement for your project. Maybe your project is just a house. Maybe your project is a hotel. Maybe your project is multi-story garage. So based on the size of your project and how much soil you need to excavate, we need also to figure out what is the size of your equipment to do this excavation. So basements are often excavated using track backhoe of between 1/2 to 1 cubic yard capacity. The capacity of this part of the equipment is something like 1/2 and 1 cubic yard. The excavation of large sized basement, very big, may be undertaken using one or more track loaders of up to 2 to 3 cubic yard capacity, loading fleets of trucks that access the bottom of the basement by means of ramps down the sides of the excavation. Large-scale excavation of this type may call for the pricing of grading and the maintenance of these access ramps. How your equipment will get in the excavation of the basement, we have to build a ramp, and all of these access uh, ramps will cost you more and will be extra cost. Sometimes we need only just to excavate trench with the width, for example, 4 feet or whatever. So we should rent a more specific equipment to do this excavation. I believe the equipment for this type of excavation is completely different than this type of excavation is completely different than this type of excavation. Does that make sense? So the first step for you as a site engineer or estimator, you have to rent the more appropriate equipment for your work. Then I can estimate how much cost I need to spend for this activity. For smaller trenches, such as those required for shallow pipes, and the cables trenching machines are available that attach to rubber tired tractors and provide a highly maneuverable and efficient trench excavating setup. We have larger trench are more often dug using backhoe. Small backhoes are available as attachment to tractors. Larger units of up to 1 cubic yard or more capacity are usually mounted on crawler tracks. So it's very important, as I mentioned, to rent the best choice of your equipment. Then after that, you can decide how much it's gonna cost you. Sometimes we can do this excavation to build up this bump, which is called bit and the sump excavations. Sometimes we need to make dewatering. This expression is very dewatering. Keep in your mind, when you are doing excavation, we can expect groundwater. If your excavation is very deep, so we need to make dewatering. To do this, I will excavate a very big excavation, let the groundwater to come in, and then I can remove this water using pumps. Does that make sense? So this type of excavation, we need to rent a suitable equipment to do this activity. Bit and some excavation is mostly performed using backhoes. The particular type and the size of the backhoe used in any situation depend mostly on the size of the holes to be excavated. That makes sense? Where there are many small bits to be dug over the area of the site, backhoes mounted on rubber tired tractors are generally favored because of their superior maneuverability over track mounted machines. So I think the how to choose the best type or the best size of your equipment, you need more experience about how you are going to do this activity of excavation. The last one, probably I will not rent any equipment. I will hire only laborers or workers to do hand excavation. So looks like your excavation is very small, does not need any equipment. I can handle this using workers. So you have to take a decision which method you are going to use. Then I can do estimation. I can do pricing and then estimate. While it is almost always more economical to use appropriate items of equipment to excavate rather than to perform the work by hand, there are occasional circumstances in which hand excavation method offer a more effective means of obtaining the results required. That makes sense? So in this one, we don't have equipment. We have only workers. In this one, we have equipment. But keep in your mind, this equipment will not be driven alone. So we should have workers also or operators. This operator will drive your equipment. And also we should have more laborers to work around your equipment. So this one, we have a driver here. We have a driver. Sometimes we have more workers, maybe to remove the soil or maybe to do anything else. So as you see here, we have equipment, yes, and we have driver for this equipment, yes, but also we have another people working around your equipment as workers. So why I started with this? Because we have something called excavation work crew. Sometimes your crew only labors. That's it. Sometimes your crew is labors and equipment. That makes sense? So how can I decide what is the type or what are the elements of your crew? I have first to decide what method I'm gonna use to do my excavation. In this slide, in this module, I'm focusing only on excavation. Maybe next meeting we will do for concrete, maybe for different activities, but right now for excavation. So if in order to determine the labor price per unit of excavation work, we have four elements have to be considered. How many workers in this crew? What is the wage rates for these workers? What is the productivity rate for these workers or this crew? And what is the productivity time factor? Is it per day, per hour, per week, or what is the time for this productivity rate? So I have example here, solved examples. I have a crew comprising three laborers, three workers, and the half of labor foreman is observed to take 2 days, total 16 hours, so 8 hours per day, to excavate by hand 36 cubic yard of heavy soil. I would like to figure out what is the unit cost for this crew. We have a crew consists of three laborers and half of labor foreman. This crew will need, based on the productivity rate, will need 2 days, 16 hours to excavate 36 cubic yard of soil. So the first step to figure out finally the unit cost of this crew, the first step, what is the crew cost? We should have information about the rate for these workers. So if the wage rate of the laborers is $21 per hour, for the foreman, the rate is $24 per hour. So the crew cost will be, since we have three laborers, so I have 3 times $21 for each, plus 1/2 of the labor foreman. So 1/2 times 24. This is the rate of this type of workers or laborers. So the cost will be $75 per each crew hour. For each working hour for this crew, the cost will be $75. Keep in your mind, the productivity rate for this crew equal 16 hours needed to excavate 36 cubic yard. So if you divided 16 hours by 36 cubic yard, I can say the productivity rate for this crew equal 0.44 crew hour needed per cubic yard. So if you would like to excavate 1 cubic yard, I will need 0.44 hours. This crew can excavate. That makes sense? This is the productivity rate in crew hour per your unit, per cubic yard. So right now, the cost equal $75 for each crew hour. And the productivity rate is 0.44 crew hour per cubic yard. If you multiply the productivity rate by the crew cost, you can get the unit cost for this crew, $33 for each cubic yard. The crew, the total cost of this crew, I'm not talking about one labor. I'm not talking about two labors. I'm not talking about the foreman, the labor foreman. No, I'm talking about the crew as a whole team will need $33 cost for each cubic yard of soil. This is the meaning of unit cost. Based on this information, I can figure out the total cost if you give me the total amount of soil. So for example, if I would like to excavate basement, this basement, very easy calculation, is 20 feet length, width, 40 feet width, and 3 feet depth. So the total amount of soil that needed to be excavated will be 20 feet times 40 feet times 3 feet. The total amount of soil will be something like 20 times 40 times 3 equal 2,400 cubic feet. I will convert it to cubic yard by dividing it by 27. It will be 88.9 cubic yard. The unit cost, because I'm gonna hire a crew of laborers. I will not say one labor, two labors. No, I will hire a crew. This crew consists of 3 laborers and 1/2 labor foreman. This crew, the unit cost based on this calculation equal $33. The unit cost of this crew, $33 for each cubic yard excavation. Since we have 88.9 cubic yards, so the total cost of this crew will equal 88.9 total cubic yard by $33 for each cubic yard. I can tell you what will be the total cost, equal $2,933.33. That makes sense? So one method to calculate your cost or to price excavation, for example, is to figure out that unit cost for one crew. Looks like we have hand excavation. All of your crew consists of just laborers and labor foreman. So I figured out what is the unit cost, means how much this crew will cost you for each unit of the excavation, each cubic yard. Sometimes your example has a crew, and this crew has many items. For example, we have laborers, we have labor foreman, we have equipment operator, and we have the equipment itself. So this is the parts of crew. If you would like to figure out how much it gonna cost you to excavate 750 cubic yard, I need to figure out what is the unit cost for this crew. If you would like to figure out the unit cost of a crew, we need to follow this example. 1, 2, and then 3 can tell you what is the unit cost. So, for example, this crew consists of 1 foreman and 4 laborers and 1 equipment operators, and we have this equipment excavator, and we are given that the wage rates for 1 labor will cost you $25 per hour. Labor foreman will cost you $30 per hour. Equipment operator will cost you $30 per hour. The excavator, it's not hired per hour, it's per day. So it will make a big change because we have different type right now. But anyway, it will be $1,050 per day. The question is, and you need to answer this question. If you are doing this work in 2.5 days, or 2.25 days, or 2.1 days, I think the equipment will be rented for 3 days. We are working with 1 day as a whole number for time. So I cannot say for the subcontractor, I'm gonna rent your equipment for 2.5 days. No, he will say if you rent only 1 minute in the day, it will be considered 1 day. Or based on your agreement with the contractor. But I'm saying I'm gonna solve this problem that if you spend only 1 minute in a new day, it will be considered a whole day. Does that make sense? So let me adjust the cost or the given rate to be per day. And also there is a missing information in this problem. The 1 day, how many hours work day? I'm gonna assume it's 8 hours. This is the typical number of hours per day. If you assume it's 6 hours, that's fine, no problem. You can assume what you want, okay? But logic assumption. So if you are going to say the laborer will cost me $25 per hour, it's gonna cost you $200 per day. I just multiply $25 for each hour by 8 hours per day. So the cost will be $200 per day, the 1 labor. The 1 labor foreman will cost you 30 times 8 will cost you $240 per day. The equipment operator will cost you 30 times 8 will cost you $240 per day. Why you converted your rate to be per day? Because the equipment is cost you $1,050 per day. So all of them will have the same time unit. Does that make sense? So I will start first. What is the crew cost? 1 crew cost. Since we have 1 foreman, time the cost of labor for man is $240. Since in this crew we have 4 laborers, so 4 laborers time the cost for each laborer is $200. What else? We have 1 equipment operator. operator, not operators. So one equipment operator time $240 per day. And we have one excavator as equipment in this crew. All of them working together. All of them working together, and the whole crew has a productivity rate. So one equipment time $1,050. So this is the cost of the crew. 240 plus 4 times 200 plus 1 times 240 plus 1,050. It will be $2,330 per crew day. That makes sense? Each day, this crew will cost you $2,330. What is the productivity rate? Your productivity rate equal. It is estimated that soil can be excavated at the rate of 25 cubic yard per hour. 25 cubic yard per hour. So what is the total time needed? What is the total time needed? What is the total time needed to accomplish this amount of excavation? Total time by total amount of excavation, you can get the productivity rate. So read your problem carefully. We need to set up some information before doing this step. We have 750 cubic yard of soil needed to be excavated. This is the total volume of soil, 750. And the productivity rate is 25 cubic yard per hour. If you divided this amount by 25, I can give you how many hours needed to do this excavation. So 750 divided by 25 equal 30 hours. Since we are working 8 hours per day, if you divide 30 by 8 hours, I'm gonna need 3.75 days. Approximately it will be 4 days. So the total time needed to do this excavation is 4 days. And the total amount of excavation is 750 cubic yard. If you divided the total time per days divided by the total amount of soil, 750 cubic yard, I can give you the number 4 divided by 750 equal 0.0053 days needed to excavate 1 cubic yard. So I need 0.0053 days to excavate only 1 cubic yard using this crew of labors and equipment. That means your unit cost, step number 3, will equal this productivity rate 0.0053 will be multiplied by the cost of your crew per day, 2,330. This is the cost, the unit cost. $12.4 per cubic yard. So I have crew. This crew consists of 1 foreman, 4 laborers, 1 equipment operator, and 1 excavator. This crew will cost you $12.4 to excavate only 1 cubic yard. This is called unit cost. If you would like to bid for this project, I can say the unit cost for 1 cubic yard to excavate this basement or this soil will cost me $12.4 for this kind of crew. Then, if you would like to figure out the total cost, it's very easy. Just multiply $12.4 times the total amount of soil, which is 750, will give you the total cost $9,320 for this crew to excavate the whole amount of soil. Does that make sense? So this example is very good example. If you would like to figure out the unit cost that a crew of people or crew of people and equipment can handle the activity or the project or the work. So not the project, this activity of the work. That makes sense? So first of all, you need to figure out what is the crew cost. This information will be given. How many laborers in your crew? How many equipment? How many operators in your crew? And what is the wage rate? So based on this given information, I can start to figure out the crew cost. Then I need to figure out the productivity rate. The productivity rate here equal the total time needed to accomplish this task divided by what is the total amount of excavation or concrete, the total amount or the total quantity take off. If you divide this one by this one, will give you something called productivity rate. Then if you multiplied your crew cost by productivity rate, you can get the unit cost for this crew of people or this crew of people and equipment. And we did this example here. The total volume of soil is given, 750 cubic yard needed to be excavated. The productivity rate per hour given. So this information and this information helped me to figure out the total time needed to accomplish this task. We need 4 days. Actually, it's 3.75 days, but it will be counted as 4 days. So if you would like to figure out the productivity rate, I need to divide the total amount of time divided by the total amount of excavation. Will give you the productivity rate, how many days needed to excavate only 1 cubic yard using this crew. Once you get this information and this information, go ahead and multiply both of them together, you can get the unit cost of this crew. Once you get the unit cost of this crew for 1 cubic yard, I have 750 cubic yard. If you multiply this cost by this cubic yard, you can get the total amount of cost for that crew. Does that make sense? This example is very important. You have to pay more attention. Pay more attention, please, for this one. Anybody has any question? One more thing I would like to highlight. We will not go in depth in this point, but keep it in your mind, because everybody, when you are driving on the highway, you can find this on the highway. How to transport your equipment to your project site. Equipment transportation. Sometimes you have a very big truck with equipment loaded on the truck, and you have a sign saying oversized truck. So how to transport the required equipment? For example, in our example, we have excavator. This excavator will cost you for rent $1,050 per day. How to transport this excavator from the owner to your project site? This is also extra cost, and based on the agreement, maybe you are the contractor, you have to pay for this transportation. So we need to figure this also as extra cost. You can consider this in a separate category. So we can read the cost of transporting minor items, very small, of equipment such as blade compactors, small rollers, bobcat, and the small tractors to and from after you are done with the project or the work. You will not kick the equipment outside your site and that's it. No, you have to return it back. So to and from the site is priced on the general expense sheet. You can put it in a general expense sheet for the project. That makes sense under a category called trucking and material handling. The item covers the cost of trucking associated with carrying incidental construction goods and equipment where the supplier of these items does not deliver them to the site. This is based on the agreement. Sometimes the cost of $1,050 per day, including the transportation. Sometimes does not. So we need to get agreement first. $1,050, I can increase it a little bit to be 1,200, and I don't care about the transportation based on the agreement with the suppliers. Does that make sense? But we have to consider this in your cost, and I can put it in the general expense sheet. Transportation of major items. Sometimes your equipment is very big, and this is where you can see truck labor signed with oversized truck. Be careful, don't drive beside this truck because we have a very big equipment. So transportation of major items of equipment, backhoes, bulldozers, loaders, power shovels, and the link is better priced on an item by item basis because I think the cost will be very big. Too much. Taking into account the cost of loading. Also, if you would like to load and unload the equipment, it's a big deal. Trucking, and also, if you see, you will see also when the truck is driving on the highway, you will find a car in the front, a car in the back, and many people around saying, hey, be careful. So this is called extra cost. Does that make sense? So any rental charges while the unit is in transit. So it's not a small process, it's a very big. Sometimes you can find a police truck in front of this equipment. Yesterday, I found one like this on the highway 380, and the truck of the police in front because it's very dangerous. The two lanes is already filled with this one truck. Does that make sense? So this is also can be considered extra cost. Also, there is one more item that should be considered in your cost: excavation material. After you did your excavation for the basement, okay, this soil which is excavated, we need to remove the soil outside the site. So material requires in the excavation and the backfill operation mostly comprise gravel, fill material if you would like to fill. But if you would like to excavate, we need to transport this material out. So we need to rent another truck to be filled and move the soil away from the site. So also, if you are filling your excavation, for example, I will not put the soil and that's it. No, we need to rent a compactor to make compaction to the soil. We need to spread water during the compaction. So all of these processes should be considered in your cost. What I need only to cover for this meeting today, the idea of how to figure out the unit cost or the unit price for one crew. And this crew is not only one person or one labor or one worker. No, this crew consists of many items, many laborers, labor foremen, operators, drivers, whatever, equipment. So how to figure out the unit cost for this crew, because once you get the unit cost, I can figure out the total cost. We have three steps. First step, what is the crew cost? I have to figure out what is the wage rate for each person or each equipment in this crew and how many of them. Sometimes we have two equipments in one crew. So based on this, I can figure out the crew cost per day or based on the wage rate. Then what is the productivity rate? Productivity rate means the total time divided by the total amount you need to do. Then I will multiply the crew cost by the productivity rate. I can get the unit cost. Unit cost for this crew to accomplish your work. And we did this example, your crew only workers. And this example, your crew consists of workers and equipment.